Good evening, this is Mr. Win bringing you Unit 3, Lesson 8, and in this video we're going to continue solving for radical equations. But notice that our radical equations are getting a little more complicated, so let's jump right into it and let's take a look at question number 1. As always, we want to isolate our radical. So to isolate that radical, first subtract the 1 from both sides, which gives you 3x minus 1 is equal to 2 radical x. Next, we want to eliminate that radical by squaring both sides. So the left side is 3x minus 1, and the whole thing is squared, is going to be equal to, and 2 squared will give you 4. The square root of x squared will be just x. So 4x. And off to the side here, let's complete tabular for that 3x minus 1 squared. So I have 3x, a negative 1, 3x, and a negative 1. 3x times 3x will be 9x squared. Negative 1 times 3x will be a negative 3x. 3x again times that negative 1 will be a negative 3x. And negative 1 times negative 1 will be a positive 1. So if I combine my like terms right away, I have 9x squared, and that minus 3x will combine with the minus 3x, which will give me a minus 6x plus the 1. And that equals 4x. Notice that the x squared with that 9 there will not cancel, which means that I have to move everything to the left. So minus 4x and minus 4x. So you have 9x squared minus 10x plus 1 is equal to 0. And since we are solving for x in this question, you have a few options. You can use borrow and payback or the quadratic formula. For this one, I will be using the borrow and payback method. So move the 9 to that 1, and I get x squared minus 10x plus 9. And the factors of 9 that multiplies to positive 9 and add to negative 10 will be an x minus 9 and an x minus 1. Next, pay back that 9. And notice the 9 will come out on the first factor, which leaves you with, and let me pull it to the top here, x minus 1 and 9x minus 1 is equal to 0. So if you do tee it up, you would get x equal 1 and x equal 1 divided by 9. Our last step is to always check our solution, so let me clear some space for that. So we said x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 1 divided by 9. And let me change color to check our solution here. For x equals 1, I have 3 times 1 is equal to 1 plus 2 radical 1. 3 times 1 will just be 3 is equal to 1 plus, and 2 times radical 1 is just 1, so times 1. And does 3 equal 1 plus 2 times 1, which is just 2. So 3 does equal 3. So when x equals 1, it does check. Let's change color again here and take a look at when x equals 1 divided by 9. I have 3 times 1 divided by 9, and does that equal 1 plus 2 radical 1 divided by 9. 3 times 1/9 will just be 3 over 9, And does that equal 1 plus 2 times radical, and let me rewrite this as radical 1 divided by radical 9. Simplifying that further, let me pull it to the side here. 3/9 will be 1/3. And does that equal 1 plus 2 times radical 1, which is just 1, divided by radical 9, a perfect square, so that'll be 3. So does 1/3 equal 1 plus, distributing that 2 to that 1/3, I get 2 divided by 3. And if you set common denominators, you will find that 1/3 is going to equal 3 over 3 plus 2 over 3. So notice right away that 3/3 plus 2/3 will give you 5/3. So 1/3 does not equal 5/3. So that one is not a valid solution. So our only solution for this problem is x equal 1. And let's jump right to question number 3. Looking at question number 3 here, notice that the radical has already been isolated for you, which means you can skip right to step 2 and eliminate that radical by squaring both sides. So my left hand side here becomes x plus 5 is equal to x minus 1, the whole thing squared. And off to the side here, let's do tabular for that x minus 1 squared. So I have x minus 1, x, and another minus 1. X times x will just be x squared. And a minus 1 times x will be a minus x. X times minus 1 again is going to be a minus x. And negative 1 times a negative 1 will be a positive 1. So my left hand side is still x plus 5 is going to equal x squared. Combining my like terms here, a minus x will be a minus 2x plus 1. And notice again that the x squared there will not cancel, which means that you have to move everything on the left hand side this time to the right side, setting it equal to 0. So minus the x, and I will have to subtract the 5 as well, minus 5, minus 5. So I am left with x squared minus 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. Factoring this, I have an x and an x, and what multiplies to a minus 4 and add to negative 3 will be a minus 4 here and a positive 1. So your solutions here will be x is equal to 4 if you tee it up, and x equal minus 1. As always, your last step, check your solutions. So let's clear this. So we said x equal 4 and x equal negative 1. So checking our solution, we have the square root of 4 plus 5, and does that equal 4 minus 1? Well, 4 plus 5 is just going to be the square root here of 9, equal 4 minus 1, which is just 3. 9 is a perfect square, so 3 equal 3. So when x equals 4, it does check. Now let's check for x equals negative 1. We have the square root of negative 1 plus 5, and does that equal a negative 1 minus 1? Negative 1 plus 5 will just be 4, equal, and a minus 1 will be a minus 2. 4 is again a perfect square, so we have 2 is equal to negative 2. And of course, 2 does not equal negative 2, which means that is not a solution. So our only solution for this one is x equal 4. Last problem, let's take a look at question number 5.